Hi, everyone, and welcome to another powerful conversation with yet another powerful woman. I'm delighted to be joined today by Brigitte. So welcome, Brigitte. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, tell us all about who you are, where you're from, what you do, and I look forward to having a really good conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Claire. Hello, everyone. My name is Brigitte Piniewski. I'm a physician by trade. I've spent many years initially in family practice with obstetrics, so doing a lot of deliveries. Really thought that if we did those 9 months correctly, and we would just be launching our babies off to 100 years of good health. But clearly that wasn't the case. And I hit a snag in my career that made it clear that our healthcare system is so out of date and really needs repair and redesign. And that has led me more and more towards a tech-enabled career where I'm looking at how technology can enable the smart household, the smart home, so that we as communities can co-create the health intelligence we need to live by, both for ourselves and for each other. And so I recently wrote a book called Wealth Care, Demystifying Web3 and the Rise of Personal Data Economies. And that work has put me in contact with Claire. So I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that when we spoke before, there was so many things to talk about, and obviously, I think we're both passionate in making sure that we all maintain a good health across our lifetime. Tell us a little bit about how the importance of, I guess, having an awareness around your health and your well-being, and how that leads to wealth care, etc.
Yeah, I think that, we often see technology being used for efficiencies and, cost cutting. And I think that especially in healthcare, there is a very much an imperative, a health imperative to use technology in new ways. One of the stark examples that I came across in medical practice, of course, our children tend to be the canaries in the coal mine. And I'm well aware that older generations never thought twice about going through puberty. We just entered one end and came out the other without, lifting a finger of any nature. And then what I saw, though, increasingly was younger populations have conditions altered so much on the ground that a very hormonally sensitive time like puberty can happen with a significant amount of hormonal alterations that are not repairable or reversible once a child passes through that phase. And of course, this is really concerning because our children are 12, 14 when they're going through puberty. They have no, excuse me, losing my voice. They have no ability to provide informed consent for anything that's happening. Their parents don't even know what's happening. And yet, 18 to 24, I can't reverse that situation for them. I can't reintroduce puberty. And it was very noticeable in the young men that they had, especially those that were overweight or obese during puberty. Fat tissue or adipose tissue creates estrone, which is a female-like hormone, and that can interfere with the testosterone receptors. These boys were not, going for the big job or the big exam or the big relationship. They were hoping to simply stay in front of a screen, bother no one, hoping that no one would bother them. This, of course, drives their parents crazy. They should be out looking for work. And it's not rare. In the US, we have a third of our adolescents overweight or obese. And I think families are not informed sufficiently with respect to why this happens and how important it is to avoid overweight and obesity during adolescence.
And what is it that is, or what can be done to bring more awareness to, from such a young age, to preventing obesity?
Well, I think we need to recognize that the older generations are the last of the accidentally well. They never paid attention to their health. They sort of accidentally had sufficient access to farm foods to movement. Occupations were labor related. Now most of employment is knowledge work. And so we're moving a lot less. Sleep, we have control over photoperiod. We can keep the lights on 24/7.
Yeah.
And so we've entered a world in which no population will ever be accidentally well again. All future populations, especially younger and younger ones, will have conditions so altered on the ground that they will need much better access to the minutiae of their lives to understand if, in fact, they have gathered the co-occurrences that matter for them to have access to their genetic potential. Because, of course, our genetics are not changing. That takes hundreds, takes centuries to change our genetics. So our young kids have exactly the same gene pool that our population had. But the gene expression, the ability to turn on and off genes, is regulated by the influences that occur on a day-to-day basis throughout our environment. And that is what's changing so dramatically for future populations. And so in order to have access to the minutiae of our lives, that's becoming easier and easier. We've got now wearables and, apps. We can have amazing sleep measurements, movement measurements, even a smattering of what types of nutrition we're exposing ourselves to. So documenting and digitizing our health expression is becoming much more doable. I mean, we don't have to, do daily life logging anymore. Representative samples are sufficient. We can use AI and other tools to fill in those gaps. And so we're walking into a world where we would need to digitize our physical health expression such that it would be explorable by AI tools in such a way that it could teach us now which lanes we're swimming in order to give us an opportunity to choose a different lane if that's what we would like. And I think the whole point of Web3 is that we couldn't have done any of this given the current internet structure that we have, which we currently call Web2. That would mean that industry or government would have access to the minutiae of our lives, which is clearly not something we as individuals see as safe or desirable. And now the whole point of the book and this effort is we have the technology now where it would be very possible for individuals like you and I to have control over the digital footprint of the digital signature of our lives in ways that would benefit ourselves as well as each other. And we could do that in safe and effective ways. We wouldn't need to rely on large industries or government to do it for us. And so I think huge opportunity here to do things differently.
Yeah. And I can imagine when you combine real data that's personalized with really solid guidance and direction, that it becomes a lot easier for people to want to implement it because the data is there. And there's something about having that information in front of you that makes you want to comply more.
Well, yeah, I think you're hitting on a very important point, which is engagement. Healthcare has struggled to generate engagement in populations. And I think we've really failed in terms of personalizing that information. So the beauty of AI is it can peruse, hundreds of thousands of parameters about an individual and come up with 20 or 30 suggestions that would be meaningful for a person. And those 20 or 30 would be things that the individual might be able to select from and make a choice. I often provide the example of Steve Jobs. He had a lot of resources at his disposal. And yet healthcare in its current form, in its current outdated form, according to many folks, was not able to provide him with sufficient information that he was tracking towards pancreatic cancer or offer him an opportunity to step out of that lane if that was possible. But a world in which all of us participated in detailing the minutiae of our lives and being safely and effectively cloaked in terms of our personal identity we would be able to anticipate a future where individuals that are perhaps tracking towards a very serious outcome could be informed of that in time to make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's the future that I think brings us all together in a way that we haven't been together previously.
Yeah.
Because clearly Steve could never have figured it out as an individual, and an N of one. We would
Yeah.
need an N of many. So, and that's one of the beauties. Our planet hosts a few billion people.
Yeah, exactly. And there's enough people in that few billion to get a large enough sample of similar people to create a
Exactly.
trend. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the other beautiful things about healthcare as an industry, to usher us into this sort of personally controlled future, is the fact that in healthcare, we really do want to encourage everybody, regardless of how much health they have or lack thereof, because we
Yeah.
need both expressions to inform the truth. We need both good health and bad health to inform the
Yeah.
truth. And this isn't the case in other industries. For instance, the financial industry perhaps has less motivation to onboard individuals with low assets. And there isn't sort of this built-in incentive to try to onboard everybody, regardless of their asset class. And in healthcare, we do need everybody's health expression if we want to have a full and highly detailed, high definition understanding of the truth throughout the decades of our lives.
Yeah. So what sort of time frame are we looking at to reach like the ideal situation where we're able to accurately take the right choices about our health and aim to stay healthy for the majority of our lives? Is that something that's a few years away, decades away?
Yeah, and I think the good way to answer that is to just walk us back and talk through what Web 1, 2, and 3 means for your audience. So remember the initial Web 1 that arrived, the World Wide Web, it was in fact an opportunity for all of us to see the same information on the screen. And that then quickly transformed itself by offering the opportunity to do transactions and have websites on the internet. And that's what we're calling Web 2, the internet that we're currently involved in. And what happened with that was, rather than all of us having the same experience, suddenly companies and certain small groups of people were able to exploit transactions and websites to a degree much greater than the average individual could. And so you had a rapid widening or asymmetry of power on the internet. And so with Web 3, it's better to think of it not as a technology, but as an ethos of using now mathematically fortified tools to bring us back to that Web 1 ethos, where each of us has an opportunity to be active players with respect to our own digital footprint, that we now have the opportunity to safely and securely be the custodian of our personal data, and to, without too much effort, provide authorizations for that information or digital data to be used in various marketplaces. And so we see a future whereby, yes, the engagement will increase because it's highly personalized, but also a future where individuals would be using their health data as an economic asset for themselves. And this is especially important in a world that's moving more and more towards automation, where many of our, traditional employment opportunities will be replaced by machines rather than ourselves. And yet one of the benefits is the fact that our lives are so complex, the ability for machines to simulate us anytime soon is still remote. And so there may be a future in which we are gaining sufficient income from participating in data marketplaces, such that many of us only require perhaps part-time jobs and spend part of our day actually deliberately using devices and apps to digitize our health expression so that our economic benefit will be even greater. In terms of timeline, the technology's here. People are using it today in very early ways. So, for instance, there's a group in Toronto that's looking at using the technology for individuals that have been diagnosed with a significant genetic marker that suggests an adverse health outcome down the road. But of course, even for things like breast cancer with a marker, 50% of that group will not get breast cancer. And understanding why that group didn't get breast cancer, again, depends on us gathering that minutia of those lives to be able to determine, okay, what are the things that really matter? How much of and how long do we need to participate in those items? And how do we actually deliberately design an opportunity for individuals, even with a genetic marker, to just completely bypass that as the health outcome down the road? So we're seeing it used in those places. I think the onboarding, having to have a wallet and participate in tokenization of the data, and some of the other mathematically fortified tools that we're using in Web3 are still a bit cumbersome for the average individual. And so we'll see some improvement there. But I think what we're going to find very quickly is that this becomes the norm, that people expect to digitize the minutiae of their lives, that they expect to not have what we have now, which is recall. I mean, we go through hundreds of transactions in a year, and you ask an individual what cream did they use for that rash 2 years ago, they have no recall. They don't know what they were prescribed, etc. But what I talk about in the book is this 3-zone model, where the base zone is home base, where is basically a safe place for you and I to dump our transactions. That means that anytime you have a question, they say, hey, what was that cream I used 2 years ago? You just query your home base AI. And that means that anything that you've ever been prescribed or any visit you've ever had, whatever you've dumped in your home base is always infinitely, absolutely correctly available to you when you ask for it.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that's the sort of base layer. And then on top of that is what we're calling a non-rivalrous, no intellectual property AI that runs on top. So you and I, from our home base, we would offer some of our data packets to be perused by each other in a way in which we could answer questions together. So for instance, if I want to know, is there a type of yoga that works better for migraine? That's something I can't answer by myself, but we as a group of women using various yoga or meditation techniques would be able to surface some suggestions about what works best for whom. And then the third layer is the traditional commercial layer. So the middle layer AI just serves up correlations. It says, oh, this yoga works with this type of migraine. And then the commercial layer would add scientific rigor and pull out causations and build new intellectual property and products and services based on what's being served up by the community.
Yeah. And I assume that for future generations, this is something that's going to be really powerful, because potentially if you start collecting data on yourself from quite a young age, that you've got all of any sort of traumatic events or that happen, or illnesses that happen in childhood that will manifest in potentially something else later on. You've got all of the data there as well.
Exactly. So you have an opportunity to choose your future, to have the freedom to select the health futures that you prefer. Right now, we're all walking around blindly, hoping that something doesn't fall out of the sky. And that's a really outdated approach. Not only are we walking around blindly, healthcare today still treats each of us as a population. So whenever you see a physician, they see a population walking in, say, oh, a woman, reproductive age, a few other parameters, and then they make a decision.
Yeah.
And so that's really problematic if you are diagnosed with a serious condition, because none of us want an average outcome from
No.
a serious condition. We all want the optimal outcome. But
Yeah.
in order to understand how to achieve optimal, again, we would need to have access to those individuals that achieved optimal. What were the co-occurrences that allowed them to achieve optimal? And this is something that is not available in the current healthcare system. We have data records in healthcare, but those data records are disease management. They do not contain the minutiae of our lives that will separate us from those that achieve average and those that achieve optimal outcomes.
So how do you get around kind of like in my head, I've got like a chicken and egg type thing going on here, is that there's still, like, you could say there's billions of dollars or pounds that need to still be invested into healthcare to make what we've got better. But at the same time, it's like you need, all of this could prevent what we're having to invest into as well. So how do you get around that chicken and egg problem?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And interestingly, I think most of historical approaches have tried to tackle healthcare straight on. And I think that we've already got an example with Bitcoin, how we should be doing things differently. Bitcoin did nothing to the financial system. It just showed up alongside. And so I see this model being the same, as a model that just does nothing to the current healthcare system, leave the efforts that are underway there alone. And but in the meantime, now there is this very safe, very effective place for you just to dump everything. And maybe initially we all just are find it so irresistible to have a safe place to dump things, because then we won't forget anything, because we know we're going to forget at least 99% of what happened to us in the last decade. And there's no way who knows what they ate last week on Tuesday. There's never going to be an idea to have that available. But if there is a safe and effective place to just dump all your transactions, then you will likely have more and more folks just using it for the fact that they want to be able to have access to those transactions. For instance, if they travel, you want to be able to say, yes, I did get my blood work done, and these are the results that I had, so that we don't have to redraw those because I happen to be in Italy instead of where I normally am, etc. So starting to use it just as a convenience tool, and then, like you say, with the chicken and egg, as that corpus of data under the control of individuals grow, then individuals can begin to self-organize according to the things that they would like to have answered. Be it sleep, migraine, back pain, whatever, that you'll start to be able to use that home base in ways that go beyond just remembering everything for you at all times. Yeah,
I find it really, really, really exciting, actually. I can see so much potential. And it, as hard as it sounds to get it all up and running, it seems a whole lot easier than dealing with everything that's already there and trying to make that better.
So anybody who's ever moved or had multiple kids to look after, there's just way too many moving parts for us to use with our current tools. And so I think that's the beauty of AI, and the fact that more and more people are using AI themselves, asking questions today in ways they wouldn't have been able to previously. That'll become the new norm. People will be expecting to have a safe place for all their stuff that is blocked off from industry or government access, where they can be very reassured that everything in there is true because they put it in there at the time it happened. And that everything is verified as basically belonging and having occurred to themselves.
Yeah. I've still got this image in my head of going to my local GP and seeing behind the reception, there's just this wall of patient records that look like they've been there since time started. And just thinking, gosh, not even that's online at the moment. But anyway,
That's
yeah,
that's the scary place that we were in, and sometimes we're still there, which is, like I
yeah,
say, so outdated. And
yeah,
we have new tools now to make it much easier for us to manage
yeah,
the minutiae of our lives, and I think we can do it safely and effectively. And then that will open up massive amount of opportunity that isn't available today. We're all still on standby, waiting to be told
yeah, yeah,
when we should screen for something, or when we need to come in for something. But we would be looking, at a future where the group would teach us what's reachable and when things should happen that are
yeah.
specific to us as individuals.
So what would be, I guess, to wrap up, your top tip for somebody today if they were to choose a particular type of wearable or start tracking or monitoring something just out of their own curiosity? What would be the easiest thing for somebody to do?
Well, I think one of the places that is super easy is monitoring your sleep. So, for instance, the Aura Ring, you just have to
Yeah,
you just charge it a few times, once a week or so, and then it gives you a good insight into your sleep, which gives you really good insight into your daytime productivity.
yeah,
What's interesting today is that all of these devices still only reflect our own data back at us. And of course, the future that you and I are talking about, Claire, is where we're not just looking at our own data. We have the opportunity to see our sleep data in the context of everybody else's sleep data.
yeah,
And it might be the group out in Sweden that is actually teaching you what seems to work best, especially through, sleep challenging times such as travel.
yeah,
And groups can self-organize with the data and say, I've done this, this, and this. And these are the things that work really well. And you get a little bit of that with the Aura community and the Aura blogging. Folks get together and talk about what they've seen with respect to helping improve their heart rate variability. So, of course, alcohol is very much a dampener in heart rate variability.
yeah,
So these types of things are vaguely available through the current model, but I think it'll be much more robust, where we can deliberately participate with our data with each other and have the ability to answer questions in really high definition. So I think that's a great place to start. And then if you're interested in, all the perils of Web 2 and the fact that, our data is being currently utilized in ways that we haven't approved, Shoshana Zuboff's book, Surveillance Capitalism, is a great resource as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds good. I
And
definitely
provide you some links to those. I can.
That would be great if you could, and I'll put it in the notes. That would be really, really, really useful, and to your book as well.
Excellent.
I know my husband has an Aura Ring, and he's found it very insightful in terms of his sleep, alcohol consumption, time of day he eats, all of those things. It's really quite interesting. He can even notice now when he's going to be ill because of his heart rate. So
it often knows before you know that.
Yeah, exactly, which I think is really fascinating. So they're really good. Well, the best way for people to reach you, I'll put it in the show notes anyway, but what's the best way? Obviously reading your book.
Right. So via LinkedIn, Brigitte Piniewski, and on X, I guess it's Wealth Care Web 3. So
Brilliant.
I'll provide you those as well. Super.
Wonderful. I found it fascinating. I could talk about this topic for quite a long time because I find it very intriguing and exciting. Such a dynamic industry to be in. So I really appreciate you joining me today.
My pleasure.
To talk us through that.
Great.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Bye now.
Take care.